It seems like in tonight's award ceremony, you are the Jack Nicholson of the evening. Our next award is the Deepa's Community Leadership Award, and that will be presented to Deepa Award. She is the Executive Director of the South Asian Living Together, or SALT. To make this presentation tonight, is Amardeep Singh, Director of Programs for the Sikh Coalition.
Thank you, Daniel. I noticed, you said that Tamara to me is your very good friend, and I didn't get a very good friend, so as a big fan of Lost, I'm a little heartbroken. I'll be honest, delivering and presenting this award to Deepa is a very difficult task, because there are so many people in the audience today who she's touched that I couldn't possibly do justice to everything she's done, but I'll try my best. I also have a written script that I'm not going to totally go off of. You can read about Deepa's career and her achievements in the program, but let me just say this, and it's a great example of what Deepa means to all of us. As many of you might know, I co-founded the Sikh Coalition on the day of 9/11. And that week after 9/11, if I could just give you a picture of what it meant for my community, the Sikh American community. In New York, where I grew up, a man named Deepa Singh was beaten with a baseball bat as he left the Gurdwara Sikh house of worship to pray for the victims of 9/11. In Flushing, Queens, Parminder Singh was beaten up with chairs at Dunkin' Donuts. In Cleveland, Ohio, during that first week, the Sikh house of worship, the Gurdwara, was firebombed. In San Diego, California, a woman named Satwanpur was stabbed in the neck by a motorist who said, "This is what you get for what you did to our country." And as many of us know, on September 15th, 2001, Balbir Singh Sodhi, a gas station owner in Mesa, Arizona, was shot and killed by someone who said he was killing the person who looked like the enemy. Now in New York, where I'm from, pretty much the whole Sikh community just stayed in our homes and didn't leave our homes during that first week after 9/11, because having a turban on your head and a beard meant that you were the enemy. Our community was down on its luck and at our knees. And after Balbir Singh Sodhi was killed on that Saturday after 9/11, I wrote an email to my friends and said, "On Monday, I'm driving down to DC. Who wants to join me? We've got to do something about this. Let's just walk the halls of Congress until somebody hears us." Now that next day, the Tuesday after 9/11, 1 week after 9/11, we had a meeting at the United States Justice Department with the Civil Rights Division. I was only 29 years old, and I was the only Sikh American representative at that meeting. My community was scared. My community was down on its luck. And I had the burden of representing everything that was happening at that meeting with the DOJ. And I was nervous. I was very, very nervous. Before the meeting started, I was sort of shuffling around, preparing my papers, and an attorney who works for the United States Justice Department walked up to me, and she said, "My name is Deepa Award. I work for the United States Justice Department. I just want you to know that I'm here to help." And Deepa, over those next months and years, continued to help and help and help. It was as if I myself was working for the United States Justice Department. We couldn't have had a better internal advocate. And Deepa, through her work with the South Asian community, has continued to be a trailblazer. As you might know, just a month ago, Deepa organized with her wonderful staff at SALT, the South Asian Americans Leading Together, the third South Asian American Summit. And SALT now represents 42 South Asian organizations as part of the National Coalition of South Asian Organizations. This work is groundbreaking. It's not necessarily glamorous. You don't necessarily see it every day out there in the headlines, but it's the hard work of building a community organization that helps represent all of us and ensure that we as a community have a place at the table. It's trailblazing work. What Deepa gave to me on that day, 1 week after 9/11, is something that she's continued to give the whole South Asian and APA community since 9/11. And given that it's almost the 10th year anniversary of 9/11, it's so fitting that today we're honoring Deepa for her work. So with that, I'd like to ask Deepa to come up and accept her Community Leadership Award. Thank you, Deepa.
Woo!
Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, special guests and members of Congress. Amar, I want to thank you for coming to the event tonight and for that amazing introduction. I actually hope that I can be half the advocate that you are in my career. I also want to give a very special thanks to the board and staff of APAGS and to their new fearless leader, Gloria Chan, for honoring me during AAPI Heritage Month. I cannot tell you how meaningful it is to be recognized in this way in a room full of colleagues and mentors who have influenced my own journey, as well as leaders like Secretaries Locke and Mineta and the members of KPAC, so ably led by Representatives Honda and Chu. I stand here only because so many people in this room and so many people who could not be here tonight have enabled, inspired, and guided me. First and foremost, I want to acknowledge my parents who moved to Kentucky from Carolina when I was 12 years old. I made a life for myself and my brother. And of course, my amazing husband and life partner, Parag, who's worked with local communities in New York and now here in the DC area is inspirational and grounding to me. They are my support system. And now being a new mother, I really know the value of their support in being able to do the work that I'm privileged to do. I want to especially acknowledge the current and former board members and staff of SALT, as well as all of the organizers and the direct service providers and advocates on the ground that I feel very privileged to do work with. 10 years ago, the landscape of the national AAPI community looked very different than it does now. Over the past decade, as our community's population has surged, we've also found ourselves facing new challenges. In many cases, our communities, as Amar said so eloquently, were enveloped in or responding to crises. Whether it was Vietnamese Americans in the aftermath of Katrina, Chinese neighborhoods facing gentrification, undocumented students and workers living in the shadows, or South Asians facing religious and racial profiling, deportations, hate crimes, and enduring an unprecedented wave of xenophobia and Islamophobia extending from the halls of Congress to state and local institutions. In these times of crisis, so many of us, so many of you, stepped up, were present, built alliances, and looked for solutions. I played a very small role during the post-9/11 crisis. That moment and its aftermath have defined my work, the bulk of my work, have defined my political consciousness and even my personal decisions. And now, as we approach the 10-year anniversary, it is a time of reflection, to think about whether our country has become safer over the past decade. What have we lost in terms of the civil rights that have been taken away from so many of us? How can we, at the national level, who now have access to political power, best reflect the experiences of those who are actually on the front lines of crisis? whether they are working class communities, undocumented immigrants, or small business owners? How do we develop a new pipeline of socially conscious leadership? And how can we build an AAPI movement that is based on shared values and common histories, not one that is just in name or based on political convenience? The charge for me at this time and with this recognition, and perhaps for some of you, is to wrestle with these hard questions, to be part of the process of telling our community's collective narratives, of helping to ensure that we are better prepared, better resourced, better connected, and to building an AAPI movement as we transition, hopefully, from times of crises to those of opportunity and possibility. Thank you so much.
Wow, well, after hearing about your courage and your activism, Deepa and Amar, I'm proud to call both of you my new friends. Congratulations.